Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Flatout Racing Network's coverage of the 56th season of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series, race number 10, final regular season race, until we determine who are going to be our playoff drivers. So far, 9 races here this season. We've had our fair share of wild wrecks. The big one has struck. We've seen strategy come into play the last couple of weeks, and 9 different drivers have gone to victory lane. We'll look to see if we can go 10 for 10 tonight, or will a driver finally break into the multi-win column and get themselves some valuable bonus points towards the playoffs. I'm Seth Cole, joined in the booth here tonight by Jessica Shelton. And Jess, we've got everybody in the field here tonight. Some of them are locked in, some of them can win their way in, some of them can point their way in. 66 laps of racing to determine that complete, confirmed playoff grid, and everybody's got a different agenda here tonight.
Oh, absolutely. You've got multiple agendas. You've got the bracket series that's still ongoing. Not everybody's here, unfortunately. Joe DeSpirito not able to be here tonight, so that's going to be a little bit of a hit. But you know, Joe's put himself in really good consistency to where he should be okay, I would imagine. But yeah, the different agendas tonight. This being the last race before the actual playoffs start, you've got people trying to get into a specific point to where they can make it in on points. You got people who've got wins that would like to lock it up to make sure they can get in with that win. Then you got the people who are already up at the top, like Bob Seminara, for example, leading the points coming in here. If he can get a win, that would add to his point. I don't know exactly the term the same, but you know, when we start the playoffs, he would have that extra point or so leading into the playoffs, which will put him in a better position in case he has an issue later on in the playoffs.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I believe their point system is you get 5 bonus points towards the playoff for every victory. And to kind of build off what you were just talking about, yeah, they have a unique system here where depending on where you finish in the regular season standings also determines a payout of bonus points towards the playoff as well. Drivers that we know absolutely for certain coming into this race that are going to battle for the championship, that be either they're high enough in the point standings with a victory that they cannot drop outside the top 20 in the point standings, or they are far enough ahead of that 10th in the standings cut line so they can point their way in, would include Bob Seminara, Chuck McClure, Brian Schilling, Joe DeSpirito, Josh Metallic, Rodney Sellens, Tim Nofsker, and then also Donnie Garrett and Richard Martin. While they're outside the top 10 in the point standings, they have victories and they're far enough ahead of the cut line of 20th in points that they look like they're going to be in the postseason. The one guy that maybe we'll be doing some more talking about during the course of this race, especially with the fact that we have 38 drivers ready to take the green flag this evening, would have to be Grant Wesley. He's got a victory this season, but he's only 15 points ahead of that 20th in the standings cut line. It is mathematically possible if he ran into problems here tonight, that win could count for nothing and he could miss out on advancing into the championship hunt.
Absolutely, but if you look at the qualifying order, Grant must be happy about that because he's rolling off third here. And, you know, based on that opening, I imagine what he's wanting to do is get up to that lead and try to lead every single lap to get the bonus points as well for that. That's probably going to be his agenda. And then you've got other people that are somewhat safe, you know, that they think might be safe. They're confident. So the question is, are they going to ride and just go ahead and say, I'm not going to mix it up and, you know, get in a worse position by getting into a wreck and just ride, maybe get a 10th or an 8th place finish tonight, even though they might have a shot, and just, you know, just chill? I mean, all I can say is I've been watching nearly every broadcast of this whole season. And, you know, I have been racing and all, so when I'm watching this, I've seen really aggressive racing to where a lot of cautions happen. And then the past few weeks, it's been really low for those cautions. So with it being the last race, what's your bet that they're going to get kind of impatient and a little bit, you know, no more manners? for
Yeah,
the end of
and
this race.
I got a whole list in front of me right here of, who can advance with a win, who can advance via points and everything. The amazing thing is, and I brought this up last week, these drivers know the situation as well. They know the scenario of what they need to do to be able to advance into the playoffs if they are mathematically eligible here tonight. And when you're racing, we've seen them 3 wide all the way from the front to the back. When you're racing 3 abreast, several rows deep, and you're sitting there doing the calculations in your head. I don't know how these guys do it. Let's quickly give the starting lineup here. So they mentioned 38 drivers are going to take the green, so a lot of moving and shaking can take place for who's going to advance and who's going to just barely miss out. Chris Elliott gets the pole position tonight alongside last week's winner, Josh Metallic. We talked about Grant Wesley rolling off on the inside of row number 2 alongside of Kelly Causey. Mike Rogers, Chuck McClure, former winner, going to be in row 3. Bob Dixon, Andrew Miller in row 4. Top 10 completed by Cy Jones, who is the cutoff line driver coming into tonight, and Billy Elliser will be alongside of him. Row 6 with Wiley Coate and Mark Pagley. Row 7, Bob Seminary points leader Tom Dixon. 15th place, Doug Hewlick. He'll be alongside John Godfrey in row 8. Row 9 finds Bernie Mobbs and Dante Ricky. Then Brian Lavelle and Bobby Farrell, they complete the top 20. Nathan Balzer and Jeff Crivello, they're in row 11. Row 12, Tim Knopfsker, Hank Middleton. Row 13, Brian Schilling and Terry Bombard. Row 14 with Rodney Sullins and Jason Scheck. Row 15's Richard Martin and Milt Surratt. Glenn Harris, Jeremy Jeffries back in 31st and 32nd. Dave Cannon, Doug Maluski, row 17. Row 18, Dave Melson and Jesse Klein. And the final row as we get underway, Pat McCarsky and Manny D. 66 laps determining who's going to battle for the championship at the conclusion of the night heading into next week.
Also, a couple of things I want to point out, kind of off topic real quick. Yeah, I remember last week's broadcast opener. Hey, I qualified higher than any of you.
That is true. That is true.
But anyway, getting back to this race here, point I want to make is you got some of these guys, and they're going 3 wide already up there, so they're not wasting any time getting positions.
Might be Andrew Miller dropping to the back, possibly. Nobody up there with him. Wiley Coate was up there for a brief moment as well, and oh, we got a spinner!
Oh, someone in the grass.
Couldn't make out who that was. No caution as it's in the infield grass and off the racing surface.
Was that Hank?
That was Brian
Lavelle. Okay, I saw the font like leaning forward, and I thought that was Hank. I'm so glad it wasn't Hank.
Yeah, new colors there for Brian Lavelle. That's why I wasn't able to pick out who it was that was spinning either.
I will go back and see what happened here.
Brian Lavelle is a driver coming into this race that does have a shot of making it into the playoffs, but, or actually, correction, nope, not him. I was actually looking at another name, so that's my apologies. Lavelle, he cannot advance into the playoffs, so he's just out here trophy hunting tonight, and obviously not the way he wanted to get this race started.
Okay, what ended up happening from what I can tell? There was a little bit of a checkup. Bernie and everyone was in a big, tight, neckly draft and kind of starting to check up for each other going to the tri-oval, and Brian just got a little bit of help from behind right at the entry where, you know, you really don't want to bump if you can help it, but it was just a case of backing off and just a little bump, and that's all it took to send him around. But he did come back on and tag a little bit of the wall, so I have no idea how much damage that truck has.
You know, we would normally, with it being Talladega, we would think, well, he's going to get a caution at some point. He'll be able to bunch back up with the rest of the field. But you brought up the point that the last couple of weeks, we've not seen the caution flying all that much. Last week, pit road was really the deciding factor into who took that checkered flag. We saw a lot of drivers who had spent most of the day up inside the top 5, top 10, get hit with speeding penalties late, did not get the finishes to reflect the performance they had had all day. You know, you said this is the season finale, the regular season finale. Playoff positions are on the line. Right now, things look relatively calm, but I'm not so certain how much of a factor pit road's going to play here today. It may go back to that type of survival and avoiding the big one to ensure that you're going to advance into the playoff grid.
And I do want to give props and a shout out to Tom Dixon, the 45. When he saw the issue happen with Brian, he backed off. But the only downside is when he backed off to make sure he was not going to come back up on track or anything where he was, He lost the draft in a big way.
Another driver that'll be hoping potentially for a yellow flag to come out and save him. So let's get what the point scenarios look like right now. Obviously, a lot can change between now and the checkered flag, but as things currently stand, we mentioned that Cy Jones, he's the cutoff line driver. He sits 10th in the standings, the last driver that could advance in via points. Glenn Harris is only 5 points above him. Bernie Mob's only 9 points to the good. So those three drivers are going to be on pins and needles here tonight to make sure that they stay above the cut line to point their way in if they can't find victory lane. Brian Schilling, the only other driver inside the top 10 that doesn't have a victory, but he was 71 points to the good coming into tonight. It is mathematically impossible for him to fall outside of the top 10 in the standings. So we may see him try and get up here and snag a victory before the regular season comes to a close. The most points that a driver can gain in a race if they lead a lap, lead the most laps, and win is 48 points in total. So right now, the drivers that would have a shot of pointing their way in, not with winning, would include Milt Surratt. He is 7 points behind the cut line. John Godfrey, 24 points back. Ken Roberts, Wiley Coate are both 30 points back. Doug Hewlick minus 33, Kelly Causey minus 34, and then you start to get into the almost must-win situations here. It's real long shots to be able to try and make your way in without a victory. Curlin Hurst minus 46, Mark Paglia minus 47, and Bob Dixon, he is in a must-win situation, minus 48 points back. And we got to remember, though, Jess, even if you win in the case of, a Paglia or a Curlin Hurst or a Bob Dixon, or you finish up inside of the top 5, there's no guarantee that all those drivers up ahead of you are going to have bad nights. So your fate is also determined by others.
And all it takes is one lap led for a bonus point, too. That could just be the difference as well during a caution.
Great point. So far, Josh Metallic, though, has led every lap since the drop of the green flag. Got himself a great launch on the top side.
There's a big battle back here around the 28th, 25th position. I'm sitting here with these big names back here. You've got Rodney Solins, Dave Cannon, John Godfrey, Glenn Harris, who's in the top 10 at the point as well. You have Jeremy Jeffries back here, Brian Schilling, Bernie Mobs, and Oscar. They're slowly beginning to make their way up, but here's something that you really don't see very often until pit stops here race right. Pit stops will be about lap 19, 20-ish or so, and there's already lap 8 stuff that we're seeing this bottom forming.
We really are. Cy Jones was leading that inside line furthest up to the front. Now it looks like a couple more are going to drop down in front of him. Bob Seminaire, the 712, Wiley Coate in the 6. Cy Jones, I mean, we were talking about this before we came on the air. Consistency has been key for him this year, and he right now sits in a position to advance into the playoffs. I did not look back. I kind of feel bad that I didn't, because it's a stat I would have loved to have known coming into this race, but I think, at least on past broadcasts that we've done, past seasons we've done, this could, if he's able to close out the deal, be the first debut season into the playoffs for the driver of number 7.
Well, I'm not sure, but I have noticed that Cy Jones has had a really stellar season this season. I mean, he's been up there. There's been a whole bunch of wrecks where, he keeps racing and just runs it out. You know what I mean? So anyone else who falls out, he'll get the spot. I mean, he's done a great job. Very consistent.
I mentioned the fact that we gave you the scenario of the drivers that could point their way in as Brian Lavelle going to now fall a lap down, and lost the draft with that spin that we saw. Oh man, that's a tight 4 wide formation.
Very tight with Hank.
Brian Schilling and Dante Ricky that were part of that 4 wide situation also, but they all are able to give each other just enough room through the center of the corner. But there are about a half dozen drivers coming to this race as well that have a shot of winning their way into the playoffs. Basically, the scenario would be they're outside the top 20 in the points, but a victory would get them the points necessary to advance into that 20th in the standings or higher bubble to clinch a last-minute playoff spot. And those drivers to watch here tonight would include Dave Melson, Billy Elliser, Jeremy Jeffries, Terry Bombard, Bobby Farrell, and Wayne Pribnow. I believe Pribnow is not in the field.
I did not see him on the starting list.
Yeah, and another driver that also would have fit that scenario, and we know that he was not taking the green tonight, is Sean Prime. Of course, I've been dealing with some physical problems. We wish him well and hope to see him back on the track soon. But looks like right now 5 drivers Well, 6 if you include the Bob Dixon machine, fit the must-win scenario here tonight if they're going to have a ghost of a shot of advancing into the postseason.
Doug Hewick and Andrew Miller have been up there on that top side trying to get something going, but I don't know. Now they're going to start back in line and tuck right gently right behind that Oreo truck, which wouldn't be a bad idea to stay right there and follow Jeremy a little bit. But so something I wanted to bring up a little earlier was we sit there and we talk about their agendas, right? And this is what I wanted to allude to earlier was, yeah, some of these guys out here, not gonna say names or nothing, some of these guys have some teammates and some really good friends, and they might be in for a normal race that's outside the top 10, but they could also be the difference maker in helping their buddy get in and causing one of the rivals to lose out.
That's a great point, and I was actually going to bring up, you mentioned about Doug Hewlick up there on the top side with Andrew Miller. That might have been a case in that the 23 is saying, hey, you can't advance into the playoffs, but I have a shot, 33 points behind the cut line. Help me get up to the front and make my way into the postseason. A lot of diplomacy goes into super speedway racing, and that is a great point. I remember I asked one of our podium finishers last week, when does the diplomatic suit get donned in this race of somebody saying, hey, you're already locked in, or you're not going to be eligible to advance in the playoffs. Help me in my attempt to be able to get into there. And, you think about that at almost 200 miles per hour, double and 3 wide. And sometimes those type of scenarios where you try and help somebody out, they don't always pan out if somebody makes a mistake. So, we'll see if somebody is going to be able to be that proverbial X factor to help somebody be able to
Well,
snipe a playoff position.
well, not only we haven't really talked about it. I alluded a little earlier, but we're so focused on this point battle that we're not even thinking about the other thing, the bracket series South. That's still going. They're also trying to battle within the battle.
That is a great point. We already know right now that Bob Seminara is sitting in wait for whoever ends up being the winner of the losers bracket. Tonight, I believe the matchups are Rodney Sullins versus Kelly Causey and Chris Elliott versus Chuck McClure. The winner of Sullins Causey will go on to face Grant Wesley next week. The winner of Elliott McClure will go on to face Joe DeSpirito next week. And then they will be facing off against Brian Schilling, whoever advances from next week's battles in 2 weeks' time. So there's a lot still going on the losers bracket side. So a couple of bye weeks for Bob Seminara in that regard.
And Chris Elliott just dropped all the way back. So I don't know if he's just getting out of line or he got shoved out there, but he went all the way back.
Mark Paglia in the 28, Dante Ricky in the 84. We haven't seen Dante in the field very often this season, 34th in the overall point standings. So, you talk about a fast driver that's very good at the super speedways that could help push somebody to a victory and to a playoff spot. That 84 might be one of those drivers at the top of the list.
Absolutely. We've seen Dante start always around the back, and for some reason, at the end, where is he at? Near the front. Some way, somehow. He's basically like that one, he's someone where, I don't know who it was in NASCAR, Seth. I know that there was a guy who would always start near the back and always be up near the front. It's like, where did he come from? I'm not talking about Harvick as a closer, but I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. There was always that one qualifier that was way always in the back, and just out of nowhere at the very end, he's there. That's Dante for you. But we also got to think about something else that I've noticed on the broadcast lately, Seth. Every single time we've had nice races like this, what's the one problem these drivers seem to have occurred that can break it? That pit road under green flag, and that's coming up. We're on lap 17 right now, or yeah, we're on lap 17, so pit stops are right around the corner. These guys are going to be jostling, trying to position themselves just right so they don't lose touch with the pack when they get in there. But like I said, we had issue last week. Seminara got involved, and luckily, he's had a really good consistency season, so what didn't hurt him too bad. But All it takes is one little slip, son.
Yeah, Seminara, John Godfrey, Ken Roberts, just a few drivers that ran into issues with incidents at pit road entry and were running so well in the field. I believe
Here we
somebody
go.
just peeled off onto pit road. Yeah, a couple
Chris
drivers.
Elliott and
Oh,
Elliott just hit the
gosh.
entry wall.
The
There is
driver's
damage
side.
on that left rear and that left front too. You can see the cave in on that.
Chris Elliott, who coming into this race,
No caution.
yeah, no caution going to come out coming into this race, trying to help somebody advance into the playoffs.
I do want to point out something that's a really good tactic, though. I'm watching Glenn Harris right now on the backstretch going into 3, and with all these guys get ready to come into pit, they're all in that line on the bottom, and Glenn Harris has just picked up several spots before they peeled off pit road. So while they're all backing up in that one file line, that's a perfect opportunity to grab some spots before coming in the next lap.
Josh Metallic leading a bunch down pit road this time. Now, Chris Elliott, we saw that spin that he had. He was -4 behind the cut line coming into this race, trying to advance into the playoffs. So we'll see if that costly mistake is going to be the deciding factor into whether he's going to advance or not. He has returned back to the track. It doesn't even look like they repaired that left side damage on his machine. Also had another driver have a moment on pit road entry. That was Doug Maluski in the 25. He looped it around to the infield grass before eventually making it to his pit stall. But usually here at Talladega, you have an incident there on pit road entry, and it doesn't normally bring out a caution because it's considered off the racing surface. As wow, we got ourselves more than a dozen drivers on pit road this
And
time.
not the fact that just getting looped around or braking or getting hooked and spinning out. So if Richard Martin overshot his pit stall and had to back up, that cost him quite a bit of time too. So they got to be really careful on that. Like Brian Lavelle, he just did that too.
Have to be flawless with your pit stops here, because you're right, with the high speeds we carry and the fact that you need to have friends to be able to stay in a pack, to be able to get the optimal speed in draft, even milliseconds can be a deciding factor into whether or not you're going to be leaving pit road with the company you came in with or leaving all by yourself.
And being by yourself is a very lonesome feeling, knowing the fact that we've had races where there's been no cautions to get back on the lead lap when you get caught. And then, like we said earlier, there's points on the line tonight, big in a lot of big ways, and all it takes is one slip and you're out.
Looks like our top 5 when we cycle around is going to be Metallic McClure, then Kelly Causey, Tim Nofsker, and Dante Ricky. And why this is important, at least right now, you got 3 former winners up here inside of the top 5. So if any one of them, Metallic, McClure, or Nofsker, go to victory lane, not only do they become the first and only multi-time winner on the regular season, but then our attention turns to points, because these 3 would have already been locked into the playoffs through their previous wins this season. And the guys that we would be focusing on mostly would be Bernie Mobbs, Glenn Harris, Cy Jones, Milt Surratt, and the driver we also saw have an incident there on that pit stop, Chris Elliott in the 9. 5 drivers right now. I believe they are separated a total of 16 points from around 7th in the overall standings to 13th.
And remember, we saw Chris Elliott, and I mentioned that he was on the high side, and he just went back. Like I said, I don't know if he was trying to make passes, nobody went with him, or what happened, but when he went back, he went all the way back near the end of the field, and when he came in, you know, all I'm going to say is, in a way, I do feel bad that that happened to him, but at least he wasn't in the front, where it could have been a lot worse with everyone behind him. And looking back at the field right now, Seth, Godfrey is way back there in 24th, 15 seconds back. Chris Elliott's about 18 seconds back, and Pagley is in 28th, almost 40 seconds back, Seth. So some of these names that have been in the top 10 in points are kind of starting to, shuffle around back there now. And now you've got Nofsker, who we saw at the back end of the pack, along with Jeremy Jeffries early. Where are they at? They're sitting there nice and comfortably in 4th and 7th. So we got them comers and goers early.
Yeah, Nofsker started this race from the 23rd position and Jeremy Jeffries from 32nd. Looking here at the second pack, led by Bob Seminara, this is where Grant Wesley has been able to merge in with after he was not able to hang with the top 5. And these three, Seminara, Jeffries, and Nelson, actually went around the 88 before he was able to pick up the lap machine of Brian Lavelle, also Terry Bombard, and others. And while I'm looking here at a couple of drivers in this particular group, you've got the 8 of Jeremy Jeffries and the 38 of Dave Melson, who came into this race in must-win situations, so watch out for them. One driver, though, tough break, who also was in the must-win scenario, Billy Elliser. Looks like the speeding police tagged him during that round of green flag pit stops. He had to come back down pit road, serve a pass-through, and that is going to hurt his chances more than likely tonight of advancing into the playoffs. Cy Jones
just went a lap down. Yeah,
just went a lap
mention
down.
him.
That's the bubble driver. That is the cutoff line driver. That is huge in the point scenario because now he's the first truck one lap down in the 29th position.
And I do want to point out that Chris Elliott is still labeled on the lead lap and in 25th. So what does that tell you? Chris might still have a shot at this.
Now, Chris Elliott, he would have to finish 5 positions ahead of Cy Jones. That's if neither driver led a lap in this race. In order for him to be able to advance, he also has to, though, make sure he finishes 4 positions ahead of Milt Surratt. Or I make that correction, he has to finish at least 3 positions within Milt Surratt's finishing spot. And Milt, last time by,
18th.
I believe, was scored, inside the top 20 and 18th. So right now, looks like Milt would be in, Cy would be out with how they're currently scored.
Yeah, people who tuned in thinking that, oh, well, it's probably going to be another big name winning, not a big deal. We already know where the field is. There's been a lot going on in the first 25 laps of this race where it's been comers and goers, and a lot of points are right now on the line with, like, several drivers. So, I mean, a normal race that you expect just took a big turn in a big way.
I'll tell you something too, you talk about the big names, but I wouldn't rest on those other drivers like a Glenn Harris or a Milt Surratt if they advance into the playoffs, because I recall back when we had the last Super Speedway All-Star race here for RTG, it was those 2 drivers working together that advanced their way into the All-Star race through the Open.
Yeah, and going back about the whole issue of working together, you can get 2 people who are right there on the cutoff line to work together all the way to the end of the race, so like 10 laps to go, and then they'll probably throw out the gloves and say, let's go. But, I mean, we have seen that happen. I remember there was a race where Donnie Garrett was in, and him and I don't know whether it was Rodney or Ken, but it was another driver that was involved in it, and, Donnie and them worked together trying to get into the cutoff position for that All-Star. I believe it was an All-Star race and they would work together the whole time to get in that cutoff position and basically help each other get in there. So you never know.
Again, we're looking at the second pack. You've got points leader Bob Seminara currently leading this group, scored in the 6th position. Now, Seminara coming into this race trying to get those valuable bonus points for regular season champion, but he did have a couple of drivers within striking distance of him in this regular season finale. Chuck McClure, who's up in that lead pack, was only 15 points back. Brian Schilling was only 24 points back, so they've got chances of maybe ending out the regular season as the overall points leader. Right now, though, mathematically, Seminara still holds on to the spot. And you've got in the 4th car in line there, Grant Wesley. Again, we talked about that he was the only driver formerly a winner this season that could potentially fall outside the top 20 in the point standings. Since we ended up having those green flag pit stops, 3 drivers have gone back to the garage area. Most recently, Jason Scheck, also Andrew Miller and Doug Maluski. Now, why it's important with those drivers out of the race, how that could benefit Grant Wesley. He was only 15 points to the good over 20th in the standings. The more drivers that retire, the less drivers that are in the race, a better chance of Grant Wesley, if he runs into an issue here tonight, of him finishing at least somewhat high enough in the finishing results for him to stay above that 20th in the standings cut line.
And I want to point out, a moment ago that Schilling was being caught by Godfrey. That little pack that they got, they caught him and passed, and now Schilling's just trying to hold on and actually rope them back in, which it looks like he's able to do. I don't know what happened to Schilling to make him go all the way from that second group all the way back to where he was. I didn't see anything. I don't know if he had to serve a penalty or not, Seth, but he's still on the lead lap. But that goes back to saying, look at what he's done all season. Therefore, he can rest assured that he probably, more than likely, not official until after this race is over, obviously, but he's in. So he can afford small mistakes like this, but being the last race, that's all he can do for right now. I mean, next week, you really don't want to afford a mistake and get yourself in a hole that you can't get out of.
Absolutely. As we know, we're going to end up having 2 races for the first round of the playoffs and then 2 races for the second round to then determine our final 4 for the season finale. More bad news for the 7 of Cy Jones. Not only did he fall a lap down, as we earlier documented, but so have several other drivers. Mark Paglia just fell a lap down. Richard Martin just fell a lap down, the former winner this season, struggling here tonight. Nathan Balser, who I believe was a driver who got hit with a speeding penalty, had to come back down and serve that. He just fell a lap down. So right now, as things stood last time by, Cy Jones sits the 5th truck -1 to the leaders. We know that if a caution comes out, 2 drivers would get the free pass, but Cy Jones is not in a free pass position as things currently stand.
And getting a wave around would definitely put you off cycle. And at this point in time, lap 31, almost going on 32 here, you really don't want to be off cycle with the leaders, especially during a playoff possible berth.
Tell you one thing here, they may be in 2 entirely different packs, but that battle for the final spot via points, it's pretty close. You've got Milt Surratt, who's at the tail end of pack number 2, Chris Elliott, who is second in line of pack number 3. They're running 17th and 19th respectively. If the race were to end right now, it would be advantage Chris Elliott advancing in. Milt Surratt would be the first driver out. So, they may be in completely different zip codes on the racetrack, but it's the finishing position that matters.
I'm jinxing it. I'm going to jinx this here. I'm looking at Rodney Sullivan on 38 kind of peaking a little bit lower here, and a couple of other drivers that are wanting to peak down a little bit. He's looking a little bit lower on Crivello. Mentioning this because so far, no cautions, so if we have a caution, it's my fault. But, I mean, I'm watching these guys, they're running single file mainly. All it's going to take is someone to back off, like what we saw happen to Brian Lavelle a little earlier. One will back off and there's a wreck. You're hoping that it's not you, especially a playoff contender that needs it. But I mean, if we have a caution, Seth, we have to look in advance here. It's going to get wild toward the end of this race. And when that happens and they start making those moves and the possibility of a caution comes out, their mind's going to be, okay, we got multiple cars a lap down. We know we're going to have 4 or 5 laps of yellow. Are we going to go at 5 to go?
Yeah, it's going to really be interesting, especially also, when you figure in, as you alluded to, possibility the race may not necessarily end under green. We may hit that proverbial point of no return at the completion of lap 62, where the next flag would end the race coming back to the start-finish line. Highlight here the 31, the new number this season for Bernie Mobbs, that leaf filter Dodge. Currently, he is riding, and that maybe is more literal than figurative, in the 13th position. Came into this race 8th in the overall standings, 9 points above the cut line, with currently Cy Jones having his issues, Chris Elliott back there in that 3rd pack, and Milt Surratt, currently the last truck in this group that Bernie Mobbs is in. He's in a good position as things stand right now, so I think what he's currently doing is just currently holding the position he's got, and I think his focus is on the execution of pit road.
I do want to point out, Andrew Miller disconnected, and it looks like, I don't know what happened with Andrew Miller, if he got in a wreck or he just randomly disconnected or something, but Glenn Harris has been having connection issues as well. He dropped and he just returned, and looks like Doug, I can't read that. I'm sorry, my eyes aren't really good right now with me with reading that well. And I think that's Milowitzki.
Yeah, Doug
Milowitzki.
Maluski. Yep.
He's gone right now, and Jason Sheck has manually disconnected too. So some of these players dropping out, unfortunately, at the moment. I mean, with all this being said, we're gonna have a lot of issues with those lap cars. They're going to be jostling for positions, definitely. So, are we going to be focusing on the front of this race, or are we going to be focusing on these lap cars trying their best to get in that position? Because you got Chris Elliott back there, like we were talking about. So, there's races all over this. There's battling for points all over. You got championship possibilities. You got the points going into the championship playoff berth, trying to get into the playoff berth on points. You got the brackets, and we got pit stops starting again, Seth.
We do. We are closing in on what will be the second round of pit stops. But back to your point there, you know, I did notice just moments ago that the 08 of Glenn Harris was losing laps. You alluded to him falling out of the server. That is huge in terms of the playoffs. That is a gift for Chris Elliott and Milt Surratt. That right there is the driver that came into this race ninth in the point standings, 5 to the good, now 6 laps down. We've already documented Cy Jones, his problems here tonight, now off the lead lap. So as things currently stand right now, with Metallic leading this race, it would be Harris and Cy Jones who would drop out of the playoffs. Chris Elliott and Milt Surratt would move into the playoffs. Right now, I'm telling you what, Surratt and Elliott, they are the biggest Josh Metallic fans out there because they want to have a repeat winner. They don't want to see a different driver go to victory lane, so that way 2 drivers are able to advance their way up above that cut line.
Yes, absolutely indeed. And I noticed that this time Chris Elliott looking a little bit more gingerly coming into pit road there.
And he gave that
But,
pit wall a wide berth too.
But I'm looking at if they decide, because you know.
Oh, whoa, hold, sorry to cut you off. I saw somebody spinning through the grass here. A couple drivers, Rodney Sullins and Wiley Coate.
No caution yet.
No caution. This would not hurt Rodney Sullins' opportunity to advance into the playoffs, a former winner this season, inside the top 10 in points, but that's a tough break for the neon green number 6 machine of Wiley Coate, because he was a driver that could have pointed his way into the top 10 tonight, albeit 30 points behind the cut line, but going to be difficult with how things have been green here for the first half of this race to be able to get those points back and those positions back that he might lose with that spin.
What I was referring to, though, Seth, is with pit stops happening. Some people, and what I don't know because I'm not a mind reader here, but if certain ways happen, I've seen. I mean, you and I have seen Grant do this in the past, and he's actually won a race by doing it. Some people have tried it and they've, lost the win or lost the top 5 for doing it. But if someone wants to stretch it or play a little bit of fuel strategy, say for example, they come in the pit or something thinking, oh, well, I'm only going to take a can of fuel, someone else has to take a can and a half. Caution comes out while they're on pit road, drive through to the back. That would shake a lot of things up too if a caution were to happen as well while someone's on pit road, or it's very, very concerning to me on how things would play out in that case. I mean, I could be jinxing things, but I mean, you never know.
No, you definitely don't. I mean, it's a super speedway race. It's Talladega. They are so unpredictable. You just have to sit back and watch it all play out, and then figure it out once the end results are done. Oh, looks like we got a driver that has been hit with a speeding penalty.
That scared me. I thought Godfrey was going to hit Shelley.
Jeremy Jeffries. Oh, and Dave Melson. Both showing up on my scoring monitor with receiving black flags here under the second round of pit stops. 2 drivers that came into this race in a must-win scenario. And Dante Ricky, after all is said and done, is going to inherit the race lead. Now, we talked about with Metallic out in front, how that was good news as a former winner for Chris Elliott and Milt Surratt. The scenario has not changed for those drivers because Dante Ricky, there is no way he could either point or win his way into the playoffs. So With Dante Ricci leading this race, that still gives a little bit of a comfort zone to the drivers of the 9 and the 80.
Tell you who else is actually enjoying this? Chuck McClure, because he's got that battle in the bracket series right now.
He does indeed. That's a great point. McClure coming into tonight, as we mentioned, in a battle with Chris Elliott. Elliott currently running back in the 20th position.
Oh,
The other
Jeffries is
battle,
coming down.
yeah, he's got to serve the penalty. I think we're also going to see Dave Nelson
Oh.
down this lap too.
Oh, this is just getting really, really chaotic. So, because right now, based on the scoring loop, the last car on the lead lap is Chris Elliott.
Yep. And he is, well, he's not that far away, about 5 seconds away from being put a lap down to the race leaders. Here they are down the back straightaway. There he is in the middle of 3 and 4.
Something that I noticed before they all pit was that second pack had a lot more drivers and they were single file, and they weren't running the front pack down as fast as what I thought they would.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I have observed that in the past. I think the big reason is because when you have a bigger pack of race cars, yeah, you may be able to produce some really good straightaway speed, but there's a lot more checkup that takes place going into the corner, a lot more off the throttle time. So, the momentum through the turns could be stifled out with more cars than it would be with less cars. That might be why we see the lead pack be able to pull away that way it has here tonight. As there is Elliott now going a lap down to the leaders. Something interesting I noticed here as well, when I was compiling the list here tonight, the top 3 drivers that were in the category of must win, based on where they were in the point standings, were Dave Melson, Billy Elliser, and Jeremy Jeffries. In the 2 round of green flag pit stops we've had so far, all 3 of them have been pegged for speeding.
Yeah, and it's just not going to go well if that keeps happening. So who would be the next one that is any must win that we have to be carefully observing here?
That would be the 10 of Terry Bombard. But I
He's right in
almost
front of
wonder,
Seminara.
But is it maybe the proverbial Hail Mary pass for those guys, realizing it's a must-win situation, so they are going to the razor's edge, trying to force it as much as they can to try and get every little bit possible there on pit road, basically saying, we've got to give it the best shot we possibly can. If it doesn't pan out, well, we went down swinging.
Well, also when you're a driver in a desperate position and you try to risk a little bit more, whoa, Brian Lavelle with a dive in front of Seminara. When you try to risk a little bit more than what you got there, Seth, it's just either it's gonna work out or it's not. But there's also that chance that a little bit of over aggressiveness can lead to a big issue in the long term too. And then you got Post. I mean, I've been around these guys to know that they don't hold grudges to the point of intent wrecking or nothing. That this series is really, really good, and they got the guys maintain themselves really well. So that's never really been an issue. But if they don't get specific things to do to other drivers, they're not going to help them out later on, especially when it's needed.
And as the laps tick away here and we look at how drivers are currently positioned, each lap that dissipates is going to add another driver into the must-win scenario. We now can add into that list Mark Paglia, Curlin Hurst, Kelly Causey, Doug Hewlick. These drivers are now in a must-win situation just based on where other drivers that were around them in the point standings are currently sitting. We might also, in just a few moments, have to throw it Wiley Coate, Ken Roberts, John Godfrey into that mix.
And Godfrey was one of those still trying to get in, because I don't think he had a win this season.
He did not. Godfrey was a winner last season, as was Ken Roberts, but neither one of them found victory lane in the first 9 races this season. The highest driver right now in the running order that would have fit that must-win scenario is that 00 of Kelly Causey. We ended up seeing him last week be the first repeat pole sitter on the season based off of the random qualifying drawing. And he's had a solid outing here tonight, up in the top 5 all night long, as high as 2nd place. I don't know, that 00 might be the underdog story to watch here for maybe a last-minute checkered flag snipe.
Well, I just saw Buckshot, or Kelly, kind of move a little bit higher a moment ago, so I'm wondering if Kelly's trying to think about what's about to come up because we're on lap 46, about to come on 47 and stuff. So they're thinking they're riding right now. They're not really thinking, oh, we got to pass to get position right now. They're riding and trying to stay tightly knit, worrying about that last pit stop. That's what's going through these drivers' mind. The last pit stop, if they can outbrake someone, out hot pit someone, what they can gain, because that right there is that right there will be their race technically.
And the case for Chuck McClure right now, he's trying to see if he can maybe get the regular season championship from Bob Seminara. He's done everything right so far tonight, been up inside of the top 3 pretty much the entirety of this long green flag run. The problem for him, though, is Bob Seminara, while he doesn't have the benefit of being up in this lead draft, he is at the front of the second group in the 8th position. So while McClure would make up points, he wouldn't make up enough to be able to take the points lead away from the 712.
Shall we jinx something real quick?
Commentator's curse?
I'm not asking for pick shots, so don't worry. I'm just gonna try to see if I can't jinx and curse that 39 machine right now, who is running third still, having a really good day. And what happened? He was leading them pretty well, and before the race started, Seth, who were we talking to?
We were talking to Josh Metallic. Yeah, the last 2 weeks, the driver we have talked to post-race has gone on to victory lane. Knopfsker 2 weeks ago and Metallic last week, so he's been able to keep himself up here at the front, has led the most laps so far tonight, 34 in total, so we'll see.
Live up to, doesn't he?
We'll see. We'll see if Reverse the Curse continues on for a 3rd straight week.
Or it might be my fault, because Michael's been doing this, and now I'm here, so it might be my fault.
We are closing in here.
All in all, we'll just blame Shelly, and then I'll just kick Dylan when we get in team seat.
We could do that. We're closing in on 15 laps to go here. You are watching the regular season finale, race 10 of the 56th season of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series. Super Speedway racing with trucks, so a perfect segue to let you guys know as well. Actually, we'll get to the promo in a moment, because we got potentially the final pit stop of the evening taking place here. The money stop at Talladega.
Jeremy Jeffries came in, and I was watching him because he was that right there is the big one that I'm looking at with Jeremy. He's coming in, Josh Metallic's in right now, Dante's in, Chuck McClure's in. Jeremy's wanting to be with that group leaving. He's wanting to be with the leaders, I'm sure. Therefore, he will at least have a little bit of help in draft. But with this being the last pit stop, Seth, you can't have any screw-ups, period, at this point. You've got how many people? 16 people labeled on the lead lap. A lot of these drivers are hoping for a caution. A lot of these drivers are hoping not to be the caution. So how much nerves goes through your mind when you get ready to come down pit road knowing that, oh, I can't screw this up?
I think if it's a driver that already knows they're locked in, whether it be via win or via points, then maybe not as much pressure. But yeah, you got a driver that could mathematically point their way into the top 10, a driver that could win their way into the playoffs. The pressure is definitely on, and a lot of times too, it's kind of maybe an oxymoron, but the best thing to do with all the thinking that you do in a super speedway race is don't overthink, because that's when you make mistakes.
Duly noted for future reference. Thank you.
You know, we actually, something that's a little bit of a storyline here, though it may not seem important, it really is. Grant Wesley got himself a bonus point for a lap led, so just padding the cushion between himself and 20th in the standings.
I thought he led a little earlier during pit stops too, so I'm sorry if I didn't call that right now. I thought he led a little earlier, so.
Yeah, amazingly, he's only the 5th different leader here tonight as well. Mentioned Metallic led 34 laps. Dante Ricky was out in front for 10 laps. Grant just led his 5th lap of the race, and then Bob Seminara and Jeff Crivello led a lap apiece. So not many drivers have taken a turn out in front here tonight at Talladega. But that's just kind of part and parcel of when we end up having the long green flag races here.
But notice that most of the racing that we're seeing I mean, it hasn't got to that end point, but it's coming. We're closing in on 10 to go, and these drivers have been really patient, really careful, and methodical, running single file. When do you say, "All right, I'm done. Let's go"?
Yeah, that's going to be the big question. Yeah, and you got to wonder, too,
Oh,
just how much of a run can be generated with the field split up into these little packs. Because you got,
Godfrey is currently labeled 14th. Surratt and Chris Elliott 20 and 21st. I just saw that update on my screen, so they're still battling for that.
they are indeed Elliott and Surratt right now. Based off of what I'm seeing, they still would get the final 2 playoff positions. And with us now closing in towards 10 laps to go, John Godfrey has now fallen into the must-win situation. Somebody's around in the infield there, coming to pit road. I believe that was the Krispy Kreme Chevrolet of Glenn Harris. So connection problems tonight, and then a pit road miscue on entry here coming to the money stop. We should mention, when we saw a number of drivers dive onto pit lane there a few laps ago, they came down pit road when the fuel window opened to make it the rest of the way. This group here, being led by Grant Wesley, looks like they're going to stretch it as far as they possibly can go, so we'll probably see them down pit road somewhere in the next maybe 4 to 5 laps.
And we got a couple people 2 laps down now. Billy Ellister's one of those, and letting you know, David Cannon has apparently retired. I don't know what the issue happened with him.
Oh, that
And
might have
right
been the
now,
truck that spun around the infield, actually.
Seth, until it updates, because I have to wait for him to come around to the line. But the last place is on the lead lap. Chuck McClure, 10th.
Chuck, if I am not mistaken, is in that group with Nofsker, Metallic, Ricky, and Causey.
Rodney just came back in. Sorry, but Rodney just came back in pit road. I don't know what happened. Bob Dixon's on pit road. I don't know if there was a mishap or what, Seth, unless they stretched it.
I'm looking to see if there's anything on my end for the 38 of Rodney Sullins. I'm not seeing anything penalty-wise, although that does look like it was a pass-through for him. I am seeing one driver, though, on my end that was posted for speeding, and that's the 2 of Hank Middleton. So we'll probably see him on pit road in the next lap or so.
Hank is kind of not really, don't seem like he's going full throttle here. He's trying his best to get down. Yeah, now he comes, but he held up Dave Nelson for a while. I think Dave was trying to help him, but I'm not sure if something's off with the tearing up, because Nelson was hitting him pretty hard back there on the straightaway.
This is going to be the group that will more than likely cycle out to the front once the 88 of Wesley and company come to pit road. I believe actually they have not come to pit road yet.
Look who the leader is.
Bernie Mobbs, 31. Yeah, Grant actually did come to pit road just moments ago. And now Bernie's coming in with Doug Hewlick. Bernie Mobbs, 9 points to the good above the cut line coming into this race. Now make it 10 with that bonus point for a lap led. There's Milt Surratt right there as well in the 80 truck. First truck 1 lap down last time, I scored in 13th.
They were 20 seconds ahead of Tim Nofsker at that point. So maybe they just get a small little half can of fuel. I think it's probably going to be a half can of fuel here. And no, it would be a can. I'm sorry. They get a can of fuel and go on back out there. They're not going to lose as much time as what you might think, but still, Nofsker cycles around to the lead. A lot of these drivers are hoping for a caution, and in that case, I don't know, Seth. You got Jeremy Jeffries barely on the lead lap, which I'm guessing is going to go a lap down in a moment. I'm not sure. They're battling up there for it. I mean, Jeffries and Schilling are going right in front of the leaders. So I mean, are they going to help Nofsker, Metallic, Dante, or Chuck possibly, or are they just running their own area? I mean, I'm really curious to know what their agenda is here.
Yeah, that is the big question. I mean, right now you've got 3 former winners up inside of this top 5. Looks like it is going to be 5 drivers to settle it out. Nofsker, Metallic, Ricky, Causey, and McClure. And we've talked about So far this season, a perfect 9 for 9 in different drivers going to victory lane. Every single one of those previous winners each week want to be that first one to get a multi-win season heading into the
You're jinxing
playoffs.
it.
I'm jinxing it, you're right. I'll tell you what though, that X Factor, the only driver right now that has a shot of advancing into the playoffs if they win here tonight is that 0-0 of Kelly Causey. So we'll see if Chuck McClure might be committed to that 0-0. Add a couple more X Factors. They've picked up, that's Jeff Crivello and Dave Melson, the 038 and the 56. So while they may be a lap down, they could help push somebody here from second, third, fourth, or fifth.
Grant, I think, is really in a good way at the moment. He's in there back in 6th. He's 12 seconds back, but still in good position for advancing.
Yeah, barring any issues for these drivers, Grant Wesley's in good shape to advance. Bernie Mobbs is in good shape to advance. So those drivers can rest easy for the moment. Brian Schilling, while he's leading this pack, he is currently on the tail end of lead lap in 12th, but he accumulated enough points that he is good to go. Dante Ricky, that's a move for second place to the inside of Josh Metallic.
Well, you remember, Dante's a good plate driver. He's got nothing to lose, just joining to have fun and race. So, could he play spoiler only? Oh, here goes Oscar. They're going to make contact, and they're in the wall. Yellow is out, Seth. That's going to be a big implication.
You're right. There were 13 drivers on the lead lap when the caution came out. 2 drivers will get free passes. We'll have 15 drivers on the lead lap when we go back green. Oh man, a pass for the lead gone wrong. The caution will wave for the first time tonight with what was then, I believe, 7 laps to go. That caution, a big break for Brian Schilling, Jeremy Jeffries, because they were ahead of the leader, and look who the leader's going to be. The 0-0 of Kelly Causey.
Seth, if Larry Mack or Jeff Hammond were here, championship implications.
Oh boy, let's go back and see
not
what
really
happened.
Championship, but the point is,
playoff implications for sure.
We also got to think about this, Seth. The drivers who are lapped. Chris Elliott's now 2 laps down. Noah Surratt's only 1 lap down.
I was actually, before we had that incident take place, was trying to figure out who would be in a playoff spot with how they're currently scored. Oh man.
Oh my gosh, Seth. We got, how many laps we got?
Yeah, we're going to be going back green, I think, probably in that point of no return window.
Yeah, green, white checker, you thinking?
I don't know if it'll be that close. We may go back with 3 to go. Take a look at the helicopter cam, this move here. Knopfsker was trying to bypass Jeremy Jeffries, who was on the tail end of the lead lap, and he wasn't quite clear on Dante Ricky, who was getting a big push from Kelly Causey. That's a tough break there for Knopfsker, who was trying to double down as a multi-time winner this season. Is locked into the playoffs though, high enough in the point standings.
Well, now we got a lot to think about.
So let me try and see if I can
to think about.
Yeah, let me see if I can do some calculations here real quick, just based on where drivers are currently scored. Know that Bernie Mobbs is currently in position to lock his way into the playoffs via points. With Kelly Causey out in front, though, that changes everything up, because when we had Metallic out in front, when we had Knopfsker out in front, even when we had Dante Ricky out in front, it wasn't going to affect with a different winner going to victory lane and eliminating out a playoff spot. So 2 drivers were going to be able to point their way in. Now with Causey out in front, it makes that battle potentially for the final and 10th position in points all that more important. And with Surratt running 21st and Chris Elliott running 27th, Milt Surratt currently sits in the final playoff position, but not by much. Also look at some of these other drivers, the new life that this caution breathes into their opportunity to maybe win their way into the playoffs. Terry Bombard was on the lead lap in 7th. Bernie Mobbs there in 9th. Doug Hewlick in the 10th position. So, there's no saying that these guys can't get up there to the front in the closing stages and pick up their first win on the season and subsequently a spot into the postseason.
Seth? Seth?
Yep.
Looking at how many cars are one lap down. From Crivello all the way down to Bob Dixon.
I believe
There,
Crivello
we
and
don't.
Martin
I'm
are
looking
in
at the
free
fact
pass
that
positions.
I'm looking at the fact that Cy Jones is sitting there in 26th. Do you think he's going to be able to be in decent position to advance here,
Well,
specifically?
the problem right now for Cy Jones is the fact that he is a lap lower than Milt Surratt. He's on the same lap as Chris Elliott. If he were on the same lap as both those drivers, then he might have a shot at it. But right now, it is advantage to the 80 of Milt Surratt because he's a full lap ahead of both the 7 and the 9. None of the leaders are going to come down pit road. We know that they're good to make it on fuel, none of the front runners anyway. So there's no opportunity for wave arounds. And I mentioned Jeff Crivello and Richard Martin. They're the two that are going to
Whoa!
get free
Two
passes.
people just went around down here on the apron. Wally Code and someone else.
Code in
Sorry
the 6
to
and oh, and that's
first
Surratt in
mention
the
that.
80.
I didn't know if that
happened
was
there?
Crivello or not. That's what I was trying to find out.
Yeah, that was the 80 of Milt Surratt. What happened there? Well, looks like they maybe the jump from first gear to second gear, a little bit of wheel spin potentially.
Trying to get out of pit road real quick to gain that little bit of advantage.
Yeah, that's that. I'm pretty sure that's the first to second gear transition. Back end of the truck stepping out on both of those machines. Fortunately, they didn't hit anything. All the oncoming traffic were able to avoid them, so they'll just
Well,
continue on.
I do want to point this out. With these drivers who are lapped, usually they'll come in and pit and go to the back end. I'm not sure if that's a rule in this series. I can't remember, but usually they do most of the time. I think that is a rule in this series. I could be wrong. I remember it being put in place in a couple of other series, so I can't really be 100% on that stuff. But all these drivers that are lapped down, are they going to be your friend or are they going to be your enemy this time? Are they going to be helping screw you over or helping screw someone else over? Even though technically it's not intentional. But you get my point. This is where we're going to see moves, tempers, possibly. I mean, so this is almost kind of like a championship within the championship.
It really is, yeah, very much so like a championship scenario here with drivers trying to make those last minute moves to be in the hunt for the championship title for the final 5 races of the season. And yeah, I would love to be able to wiretap into all of our race leaders' radio communications, listen to who they're talking to, what alliances are they making, what deals are they currently making. It's going to be Kelly Causey sharing the front row with Chuck McClure, Josh Metallic in row 2 with Dante Ricky, Grant Wesley and Bob Seminara up in row 3, Terry Bombard, Bernie Mobbs row 4, row 5, Doug Hewlick, Brian Schilling, Jeremy Jeffries and Nathan Balser right now in row 6, and Tim Nofsker right now going to be the last truck on the lead lap up in the front of the field in the 13th position. That's a good point too. With Jeff Crivello, Richard Martin getting the free passes, they're going to be starting shotgun in the field. That means even behind the lap down cars. So they're going to have a lot of trucks to pass before they make any passes for position.
Well, there's still like, we're going to have a couple laps to go, and I do want to point this out. Looking at this top group, we know that Josh and Chuck work well together. We have seen them do it. We have seen Bob Seminara and Dante work well together. Now, the question is this going to actually help, or is it every person for themselves? We're going to get ready to find out in a couple more moments here. So they're about to go back to green flag coming off of this corner.
And you hit the nail right in the head, Jess. You were correct. It is going to be a green-white checker to finish out the regular season finale. Well, we got the opportunity. We've got trucks on the racetrack here at the Super Speedway. It's a perfect segue to let you folks know that Flatout Racing Network is going to be carrying the new season of the Great Lake Truck Series next Tuesday night. Kyle Lawrence and Alex Connolly is going to be bringing you the action from Daytona International Speedway, the season opener, July the 12th. Be sure to tune in for that one. But here tonight, 2 laps, a little over 5 miles, going to determine who's advancing into the playoffs, who's just going to be trying to finish out the season, going to victory lane and going for wins. Kelly Causey in for the restart of his life. A win locks him into the postseason. McClure and Metallic, they look to pad their points as they're already locked in.
A little bit of a stack up back here with Novsker and Glenn Harris on the inside line, even though they're not up near the front with enough speed. I mean, they're already starting to get ready to move. There's 3 wide almost up there at the front.
Brian Schilling was that truck making the 3 wide move, tucks back in line behind Bernie Mobbs as Causey's clear for the lead. Metallic trying to clear for second on that inside line.
Jeremy Jeffries going to the high side with Schilling to get around Bernie Mobbs back here. This is for, what, 10th?
Lap truck of Dave Melson there with him as well. We could be 3 wide coming back to the white flag. Look at the top side. Chuck McClure, Dante Ricky pushing hard in that middle lane.
Seth, I got him. There they go. There they go. Right there. Dante.
That's going to be a caution. We're racing back to the start-finish line. Bob Simonero out of shape. He collects Hewlick as Causey crosses the line. He'll pick up the victory, but one thing we do have to wait for, I believe the wreck started in the tri-oval with contact from the 00, so does the win stand or not? We'll have to wait and see, but unofficially, Kelly Causey has won this race and may be heading to the playoffs. Oh man, Bernie Mobbs was collected up in that one. He's trying to get that thing back around. The worst he could finish, if he can get the truck fired enough to get back to the start-finish line, would be, I believe, 13th, and he would still advance. If he doesn't, that could throw a huge monkey wrench into the point scenario.
Seth, I'm sitting here looking at this replay real quick of the issue that happened, and to me, right before they got in that trial, it looked like the 39 had a bit of a run and just barely bumped Kelly while Kelly was getting ready to get that transition to go from straightaway into the trial. And with that happening, a little bit of contact pushed that 00 out of line just a little bit from 39, and on it went. I don't know how you look at it on your own end, but on my end, that's what I'm seeing. Just a little bit of a bad bump by the 39.
And to your point, it looks like the 39 Metallic may be taking the responsibility for the incident. We will be going back and looking at the replay here, but Metallic is coming down pit road to EOL himself, which means if the 00 is not called for cause, he is going to come around through the tri-oval, the checkered flag in the flagman's hands. What a first win on the season for Kelly Causey. It's going to advance him into the playoffs here tonight for the 56th season of the R10 Talladega Challenge. Look at this. Yes, absolutely. A popular victory. Lots of congratulations going on right now.
Matt Rod moment.
My goodness. Rodney Sullins pulling up alongside here. There's Cy Jones in the 7. Kelly Causey's advancing into the postseason. He came into this race just 30 points behind 10th in the standings. As we got closer to the end of the race, it was a must-win situation. You go back to the Novsker spin and Causey leading us back to the caution, and then the ability to save that truck after the bad bump from Metallic to get back to the caution flag. I'll tell you what, we don't have heart monitors on these drivers in the trucks, but I wish we had one in that 00 for these final 10 laps.
Well, we're going to have it during our post-race to have the emotions from the 00 in there as well. Oh, that's going to be a great
post-race interview, no doubt.
But I do want to point out, looking at the end of this race, Jeremy retired in 19th. Hagley got retired in 20th here. Godfrey's in 22nd, Chris Elliott 25th, Milt Surratt's in 15th, though. That's quite a big jump position based on where Chris finished. We were thinking that there might be a chance they might be somewhat close position wise, but that is not the case. So Terry Bombard coming home in 12th. I have no idea. What do you think here?
As of right now, with Kelly Causey winning and advancing into the playoffs, it would all depend on whether he would advance into the top 10 in points with that victory or not. If he does not advance into the top 10, then right now, the final spots by my calculations would go to Bernie Mobbs, Milt Surratt, and Chris Elliott. But if Causey does advance up inside of the top 10, then it would go to only two drivers pointing their way in, which would be Bernie Mobbs and Milt Surratt. So right now, Chris Elliott kind of sitting there with bated breath, waiting to see if he's going to be advancing into the postseason or not.
Well, now that this race is over, why don't we get down to the quote unquote official standings of this race? What do you say?
Well, we're going to first look at the replay of what went down here through the
Oh, I
tri-oval.
thought you already looked at the replay.
Now we had to see the celebration there at the checkered flag for one Kelly Causey.
I
Here's
am
what.
sorry. I thought you already looked at it.
Oh man, Dante Ricky, John Godfrey. Oh man, this is kind of shades of about 3 weeks ago where we saw trucks visit the upper levels of the catch fence through the tri-oval. That time it was Hank Middleton and Brian Lavelle. Bobby Farrell was in that. Nate Balzer, who was going to have a good run. There's Demar, Glenn Harris. Bernie Mobbs' truck did not make it back to the start-finish line. We should document there after taking the white flag. But he is going to finish, it looks like, in the 13th position. So that should be enough for him to advance in via points. So very fortunate for him that he was on the lead lap at the time of that wreck.
You know, it's a heartbreak for a lot of these drivers. I mean, you had Terry Bombard up here trying to get himself in position because he was right there in the thick of this too. So
Was indeed. Bombard was up there. You also had Doug Hulick in the 23. Had a shot of winning his way into the playoffs. Take an onboard here with the aid of Jeremy Jeffries.
wild ride.
It is indeed for the driver of the Oreo Chevrolet. Pushing Brian Schilling on that top side. They had some good momentum, but then we saw Dante up into their lane, up and over goes Jeremy Jeffries and spinning into the wreck, Richard Martin and Nathan Balzer. Trail of black smoke up ahead there. Drivers that tried to limp their machines back around, others that just could not make it. Now we'll take a look here at the finishing results. As Kelly Causey with the victory, he will advance into the postseason. We should, in a few moments, have our point standings official to let you know who is indeed going to be in the hunt for the championship next week and who is not. But Chuck McClure, he is going to finish in second, Seminara in fourth. So Seminara is going to hold off the advances of both McClure and Schilling. He's going to get the bonus points for the regular season championship. Grant Wesley, we talked about it here tonight. We had to talk about it because it was a storyline, but he didn't really make it much of a storyline here tonight, as third place will easily advance him with his victory and being in the top 20 in points in the playoffs.
It's definitely a good storyline itself for Grant because remember at the very beginning of the season he missed I don't know how many races.
At least two races.
Was able to come back. I think he got an issue the first race, and the second race I believe he won the second race when he returned, and then I think he might have missed one or he got a wreck in the next one. I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden, he's there. He consistency finishes right up there. Just everything went his way to get in. So that will definitely be a driver to watch in this playoff berth.
If I recall correctly, I think the race that he went to victory lane, he headed into that event 33rd in the point standing. So yeah, a great comeback run here this season for Grant Wesley. Doug Hulick, good run, though. Even though he's not going to advance into the playoffs, was in a must-win situation. Solid top five run for him. Dante Ricky, despite the fact that he pounded the outside wall there, bringing out that last caution. He's going to bring it home in 6th. Jeff Crivello there. It's been a long absence since we've seen the 56 on track. He's going to bring it home 7th. Brian Schillings, he's going to be in the playoffs. He's going
You
to
know,
finish 8th.
that
Nofsker
right
in
there,
9th, and Richard Martin in 10th.
that right there to me is a really good feel-good story right there with Schilling and Nofsker. I mean, even though they were on the lead lap and they were pretty decent in points at that point, especially Schilling, I mean, it wasn't too long ago they were out of the. I mean, you had Schilling out of the pack, way out of the pack, right? And well, look at that. He was able to come home with a top 10. Nofsker getting involved in that issue earlier on. Didn't go a lap down. Stayed out there. The big wreck happened. Still able to come home with a top 10 side.
Well, Schilling, prior to that first caution coming out, he was on the tail end of the lead lap, just ahead of the race leader, and was able to then cycle back around,
With
still on the
Jeremy,
lead lap,
wasn't
and
it?
pick up spots. That's correct, yeah.
And then you got the unfortunate of the other guys who went a lap down here. You got Terry Bombard, Bernie Mops, who went for that wild ride on that last lap. I mean, he was up there leading a lap, and where he was looked like he was going pretty decent at that point too, Seth. I mean, he was doing what he needed to do to try to advance. I mean, even though he wasn't leading the field, he was pretty decently, where he had to be specifically to just maintain and say, okay, I can't push, otherwise I might get wrecked, and I'm not going to back off too much, otherwise I'll lose the draft. But he was where he needed to be, in my opinion.
Yeah,
You got
and being on the lead lap when that wreck took place, I think was a key factor because for those that don't know, the way that it works here is if you can't make it back to the start finish line, it will score you a lap down post race. It does score him a lap down in their finishing results, but because he was on the lead lap when the caution came out, it scores him ahead of drivers like Coates, Surratt, Sullins, Rogers, who were already a lap down. If he's on the same lap as those guys and he doesn't make it back to the start finish line, he's probably finishing down around 19th or 20th as opposed to 13th.
And for the rest of the guys back here, Hank Middleton got 18th. Jeremy Jeffries out at the very end of that. And that also is something else, too, based on the lap that he finished on during the wreck, that he couldn't make it back, retiring. He was still ahead of some of these other drivers as well, bearing that up the same way that it works with the lap down and retiring as well from the lead lap. I mean, Paglia, we really didn't talk about Paglia too much, Seth. But he was quiet most of this race.
But we are still waiting for the official word of where Kelly Causey ends up in the overall point standings. That's going to determine whether one or two drivers will point their way into the postseason. Chris Elliott right now is the one whose future hangs in the balance. Kelly Causey came into this race 34 points behind the cut line. As we mentioned, the most a driver can gain via points with a lap led and most laps led and a race victory is 48 points. So we're still waiting to see where the 00 ends up in overall points, Dane, to then determine whether it's just going to be Milt Surratt advancing in via points or Surratt as well as Chris Elliott. While we're
We're
continuing to wait for this, so why
I
don't we
just
see if
asked. I just asked. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just asked about that, and they are conferring about that right now.
Okay, so we will hopefully have word for you guys of what your playoff grid is going to look like heading into next week. The ones that we can confirm for absolute certainty: Bob Seminara, Chuck McClure, Brian Schilling, Joe DeSpirito, Josh Metallic, Rodney Sullins, Tim Knopfsker, Bernie Mobbs, Richard Martin, Grant Wesley. I think the points may have just been updated here. We also know that Kelly Causey will be
Bernie
in the
Mobbs made it.
playoffs. And let's see, we have. Oh, wow. A lot really changed because Grant Wesley advanced up into the top 10, as did Richard Martin. So Milt Surratt and Chris Elliott, neither one are going to advance into the playoffs via points. They both got knocked out of the top 10, as did Cy Jones and Glenn Harris.
Seth, who do you like for your chances now?
My goodness. So right now, if my numbering is correct here, it looks like it's going to officially be 12 drivers that will battle in the playoffs this season. Seminary, your regular season champion, McClure, Schilling, Metallic, Sullins, Nofsker, Despirito, Mobbs, Martin, and Wesley. If those drivers had a win or didn't have a win, doesn't matter. They were in the top 10 in points, which advances them anyway. And then two drivers outside of the top 10 in points, but inside the top 20 with their victories. Donnie Garrett and tonight's winner, Kelly Causey. That's the 12 drivers that are advancing into the postseason.
And it goes back to what I said about Bernie. Bernie led a lap earlier on, stayed out, got that little extra cushion like you were talking about with Grant. And what happened? He didn't try to push it too hard, didn't try to make any unnecessary things that might happen to cause him to get wrecked out early, and he didn't back off playing it too safe. He said, okay, well, I'm just going to be right here in the middle and right in the middle, and guess what, Seth? He finished 13th. He was running top 15 too when we were talking about him earlier. So, I mean, that right there, being consistent, trying to not to make a mistake, either way of pushing yourself or backing off. So good job by Bernie Mobbs in the 31 making it. I mean, leading up the next week, Seth, I don't know. I mean, are they gonna calm down, or you think it's just starting?
Oh, I think we're gonna be having our season opener all over again because it's technically a clean slate, and everybody wants that automatic ticket into the second round of the playoffs. But man, you're right. Congratulations there to Bernie Mobbs, only one of two drivers, Brian Schilling being the other, that pointed their way in. Everybody else, if they hadn't pointed their way into the top 10, would have had a victory to be able to fall back
Now,
on.
now, do we blame Schilling Motors for him actually being in the top 10, or do we blame Schilling Motors for screwing him out all times prior? I mean, I don't know how to lean on this one, Seth.
Well, maybe he's saving the best for last. Maybe he's waiting to get that victory when it really matters in the postseason.
The one story that I am really heartbroken about out of this whole group, and I hate to say it, I normally don't play favorites on this, is it hurts to see that Cy Jones didn't make it after the consistency that he had. Or did he make it, Seth? I
No,
don't
he did
remember you
not
saying him.
advance.
So,
Nope.
but I mean, Cy Jones being consistent all season, the way he was, being where he was, I mean, one bad race, that's what we were talking about earlier on at the beginning. All it takes is one race, one mulligan is all you really get. But Cy's had a pretty good season, and just one race has just screwed the whole thing up. And, it really breaks my heart to see him out of it based
And what
on
about
one bad
Glenn
race.
Harris? I mean, something out of his control, connection problems. He was up inside the top 10 in points for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And he loses 4 positions here tonight from ninth down to 13th. And he will not be advancing to the playoffs either, with something entirely out of his control, finishing 6 laps down in the 31st position. So, while we've got the elation of certain drivers advancing their way into the playoffs, there's obviously the heartbreak on the other side of drivers.
Mel Surratt, I think that was his first opportunity at the being as close as he was. I don't recall in previous seasons of him being as close as he was this season.
Yeah, Chris Elliott had a shot here tonight as well, and pit road miscue in the early going kind of put him behind the 8 ball early. So, Talladega, if it doesn't get you one way, it'll get you another, and no doubt it played its part into who was going to be moving on and who was going to have to be dreaming about next year.
Bracket. Forgot who was on it. I know Chuck McClure was on it. And who was
Yeah,
he
we
going?
got Chuck McClure, who finished second. He's going to advance to take on Joe Despirito. And then Kelly Causey, tonight's race winner, going to be advancing to take on Grant Wesley in round 6 of the losers bracket next week.
Going to get a little bit more interesting, because when I was part of this back on, I think it was season 50 or 51 or 52, South, I remember I was battling one of the guys that I was trying to get into the playoffs with, and they didn't really have a problem. They were pretty sure they were going to advance by their points anyway, but they said that they really wanted to win that bracket title. That was one thing that was eluding them. They wanted to put that in their bucket list. So it may not seem like much, but that bracket title does make a lot of you know, noise for some of these drivers. They really want that, like that Daytona 500 win or something. They really want that on their mantle.
And it's really funny too if you look at the matchups next week because the drivers are ranked from 1 through I believe it's 30, 30 or 32, based on where they're running in points when the bracket series begins. So next week, Grant Wesley, who entered into the bracket as the number 27 seed, will take on Kelly Causey, who came into the bracket in the 29th seed. And then you've got Joe DeSpirito, who was the 4th seed, taking on the 9th seed of Chuck McClure. So that just
Well,
shows
I
right
mean,
there. It doesn't matter where you start the bracket, it's where you finish it out.
well, at the same time, notice next week they're really going to be going even harder because of that
Oh, yeah.
bracket thing. Most of these guys want to win that bracket, like I alluded to a moment ago. So these guys are already battling for a playoff, in the playoffs. So that's going to be added pressure here. Are they going to be more aggressive, or are they just going to try to run their own race and not worry about the bracket? I mean, what's the bigger choice? Being able to get the bracket, knowing that, oh well, he's right there, I can make this move, and get it, or just relax and look at the bigger picture.
And you got Brian Schilling waiting 3 weeks from now in the wings for whoever advances into round 8 of the losers bracket. Bob Seminara, a long wait there as he's going to be seeing who ends up winning the losers bracket for him to be able to take on in the finals. What do you say we talk with some of our top 3 finishers here tonight? All 3 of them going to be advancing into the playoffs, so we might get a little bit of an idea of what their strategies would be going into the first race of the postseason. And let's kick things off with the driver that is going to finish 10th in the overall regular season standings with a victory in the bank, third place finisher, Grant Wesley. Hey, Grant, it's Justin Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you.
Man, I'll tell you what, you were a topic of storyline here tonight just based on the fact that there was a possibility with the number of drivers that we had in the field that despite you winning, you could mathematically fall outside of the top 20 in the point standings. Was that at any point on your mind here tonight? Is that why we saw you kind of have the strategy of keep that 88 up as close to the front as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't dwelling on it, but yeah, it definitely crossed my mind there before the start of the race. Last week, I got the lucky draw of starting 34th, and I got caught up in a little incident on lap 2, and there's a caution-free race, so I didn't catch any breaks there. I managed like a 21st finish, so that wasn't. It could have been a lot worse. Definitely put me in a bad position coming into this one. But I just tried not to dwell on that. What you focus on tends to be where you go. So I wasn't thinking about not wrecking and finishing last. I was just focusing on the front and getting a podium, and that's what we did.
Can you please give me the golden horseshoe now?
No.
Wow, that's mean. So I alluded to this earlier, Grant. Couple of races in a row, we've seen a lot of issues from a lot of the big name drivers coming down the pit, making mistakes. We saw an issue where Chris Elliott came down and hit the entry of pit road when he came in the first time, I believe, and it just pretty much ended, really bad for him trying to get to that playoff. How was your mentality this whole race, knowing it was green flag all the way except that last bit, knowing all these green flag pit stops? Was it more nerves, or was it like, you know what you're doing, you're not nervous, you got it?
Well, I started this race third, so I was in a good position just riding there. I think I was like fourth coming down pit road for the first time around lap 20. And that's where my mistake was made. Is I decided to stay out an extra lap, and all those guys pitted, and it was a guy that was a couple trucks behind me ended up falling in with me, and we just didn't have the draft going for that one lap difference. So once I came down pit road and got back out, I wasn't able to maintain that lead draft. But yeah, to your point, pit road entry, it's so easy to make mistakes there, being able to hot pit.
Well, I mean,
So
you have more on the line at this point. You got the playoffs right here. I mean, does that make it more nervous for you to come in compared to not, because you might take out someone else?
there's definitely a lot more pressure, that's for sure. I mean, it's more important not to screw up. So, but you just try not to think about that stuff. You just try to do exactly what you do every other time, and just hit your marks.
I do have one other question for you that I'm also going to ask later on to Buckshot, but I've always been curious about this. You've got a lot of drivers that you run around and work with throughout the race that were in the playoffs already. Like I mean, even though Joe wasn't there, you'd have Joe, you'd have Chuck, you'd have you know Bob, right? And then you got these drivers who either are already eliminated from playoffs or they're lapped down from any contention whatsoever. Would you rather work with the lap down drivers that are pretty much mathematically out of a championship spot, or would you still rather work with the top 10 to try to seal it in? I mean, where does your loyalties in your mind go at that point?
I would definitely prefer to be with the guys that have nothing to lose. Those guys will be more inclined to follow you or push you to a win, or pass a guy that you're trying to beat. So
Well, I mean,
anytime.
with the I mean, the extra point I wanted to make was you got these points for winning and where you finish at adding on to the start of the playoffs. So it's also, I mean, does that even go through your mind at that point or not?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like 3 points per position or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, that's super important.
So obviously, we know that you weren't in the season opener. We didn't see you make your first start until I think it was race three. But theoretically, we've kind of wiped the slate clean. We now know the drivers that are advancing into the playoffs, and it's time to go again with the first round, trying to advance into round two. So where do you see next week in terms of strategizing? Do you strategize potentially for maybe a race that's going to have some big wrecks like we've seen a few weeks ago? Do we continue on this streak of the long green flag runs and pit road playing its part out? Or do you maybe not even strategize yet until you find out where the random draw is going to put you on the grid?
Um, I always just try to get to the front, so if there is trouble, you kind of steer clear of it. But going into next week, I'm 10th in points. I've got to win. But oh yeah, by the way, congratulations to all 10 drivers that won a race so far this season. I think that's incredible. But there's 10 drivers that are getting those bonus points for a win. So pretty much the bonus points I would have for a win are pretty much out the window, and I'm starting 10th in points. So I'm in a hole. And going into next week, I'm going to have to dig. Hopefully, I get a lucky draw and I'm towards the front. If I'm towards the back, I'm going to have to be smart, but I definitely need to try to get to the front as quick as I can.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun to see the storylines that culminate during the first round of the playoffs. Congratulations, Grant, on advancing into the hunt for the championship. And now we'll give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Yeah, first off, congratulations to Kelly Causey on winning tonight. I believe that was his first win here on Thursdays. And like as I just said, that's 10 different winners for this season. So just a pat on the back to everybody involved there. I'd like to thank you guys for putting on an awesome broadcast. I'd like to thank the owners here, Sean Prime and David Cannon, for giving us a great place to race. The admins, Josh, Wiley, Tim. I'd like to thank my teammates at XFM and my friends and family for watching, and my girlfriend, Brittany.
Well, Grant Wesley, he is a playoff contender here in season 56. He'll look to begin his playoff road next week as we return to Talladega. Congratulations once again on advancing into the playoff grid, and we look forward to seeing what you do when the green flag flies in the playoffs next week.
I appreciate it.
Grant Wesley going to be one of 12 drivers, as we mentioned, that have advanced into the playoffs here for the RTG Tally Challenge. And we're now going
You
to
know,
talk to another driver that is advancing in.
Seth, before we get there, I do want to point out I'm hoping to be racing next week, and my feelings are already hurt from Grant Wesley. He's not going to share that golden horseshoe, so.
Maybe you can solder it in half, get half luck on the on both sides or something. I don't know if that works. Not sure if that's how luck works. But anyway, let's talk to a guy that's had a lot of luck on his side the last couple of weeks. He's been maybe the most consistent driver of the playoff drivers in the last month or so. Let's talk with tonight's runner-up finisher, Chuck McClure. Hey, Chuck, it's
Chuck!
Justin Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I sure do.
Well, man, I'm telling you what, I'm looking over your statistics from this season, and in the 10 races we've run for regular season races, only 2 finishes outside of the top 6. Back to back runner up finishes here leading into the playoffs. Now, granted, you weren't able to get those bonus points for the regular season championship, but it's certain looking like momentum is on the side of this 17 truck going into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's always good to run nice, and I need to stay up there and keep the points. And yeah, momentum is a big deal here.
Speaking of momentum, Chuck, I mean, past few weeks have been really good. Like Seth just mentioned, I just have to ask, moving forward to being part of the championship now. I mean, do you become more patient or do you become more aggressive starting out with the first race?
I think the first couple races, since I'm up in second in the points, I believe, have a win to pad some of those points. Maybe I'll be a little bit more careful, just a little bit. But as the season goes on into the chase, if I keep advancing, yeah, I'm going to have to ramp it up to be a contender.
Now, it's been interesting here the last couple of weeks with the racing we've had, the long green flag runs, pit strategy, execution on pit road. Pit road, maybe more so than the racetrack itself, has played a huge part into our official playoff grid here tonight. You see the trend of the long green flag runs continuing here into the playoffs, and with that being said, just how much more emphasis does it does execution on pit road have into advancing into the next round?
No, it's huge, especially with these low caution counter, no caution races. You better be on your game when you get on pit road, and keep it clean. Don't speed, of course, and try to work with people coming in and out. That's a big deal.
I do want to ask Chuck. I mean, like I've said prior, I watched some of the broadcasts the past several races, and from races that became really overly aggressive to having a lot of cautions to having hardly any cautions at all. I mean, do you expect in your mind that trend to keep going of more focused? Okay, I'm going to have green flag pit stops, or do you think now that we're hitting this playoff, going to the championship, do you really think that yeah, the cautions are going to be there now?
I certainly hope not. I would much rather run good in a green race than a caution fest. Nobody wants to run around 70 miles an hour when they could be going 200. So I would hope that the caution count is going to continue to be low, but you never know, and especially on them cutoff races.
Well, Chuck, you're a former champion of the series. You've been here before, so it's going to be interesting to see how you approach this season's playoffs. We're now going to give you the opportunity to do some thank you, sponsors, and shout outs.
Well, first I want to give a shout out to Buckshot Kelly Causey on his first win. That was a great win. We both had pretty good saves, banging doors, and of course Bob Seminara for being the regular season champ. There was nothing I could do about it. I tried, and he had to finish a lot worse than he did. And congrats to him. Appreciate you guys for putting on a real exciting race every week. And of course, the admins here at RTG, Josh and Bones, and all the guys, Tim, they keep us in line and keep us going. And I appreciate my friends and family watching from Marshall County schools, school bus drivers and aides, and all them, watching me. And I appreciate it all.
Well, Chuck McClure, he is a playoff contender this season. He started out the regular season with a trip to Victory Lane. We'll see if he can start out the postseason with a trip to Victory Lane and an automatic ticket into the second round. Chuck, congratulations on advancing, and we look forward to seeing you go to work next week.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's go down to Victory Lane. The wait is over. It's finally time to talk. The first time winner in the RTG Tally Challenge Series, Kelly Causey, playoff contender, Kelly Causey. Let's see if we can talk with him right now. Kelly, it's Jess and Seth up here in the FRN booth. Have you got a copy?
10-4, sure do.
Well, man, I'll tell you what. Coming into this race, you had a shot to point your way into the top 10. We get closer to the end of the race, you're in a must-win situation. You were up in the top 5 all night long. You pick up the victory. You are advancing into the playoffs. It's been about roughly 15 minutes since you took that checkered flag. Has it sunk in yet?
Not really, man. It really hadn't. I went into it. I missed 3 races early in the season, and so I got back behind in points and have really done pretty good since then. And just barely got into the top 20 last week, so the win would qualify me. So really wasn't expecting that, but man, it was an unbelievable race, and I'm not going to be able to go to sleep tonight. I can tell you that much.
When you, well, first off, congratulations, Buckshot. It's
Thank
really
you.
good to see that you finally got in there and that I didn't screw anything up this time.
No.
But I mean, congratulations, big time for you making it, not just winning, but making it into the championship, because it's only going to get more difficult from here. But I've been racing with you for a while, so I'm sure you can handle it. Nothing that you can't handle. But I do want to ask you, you said that where you were coming in, right? The whole race from when we started, right before we started, to the end, before that win, before the 10 lap area to go, or whatever you want to call it, the moment of realization you're going to make it, was it even in your mind, oh, where am I at? Where am I at? Where am I at? Who am I battling against at all at any time? Or were you just here racing like a normal race in your mind the whole way through? Like where was your mentality at?
Well, I knew going in and being in 20th place and already missing 3 races, it probably wasn't going to race in unless I won the race. So when I was with those guys, I stayed with Josh and Chuck. I started between them 2 guys and had Tim and Dante, and I just stayed with them. And we, every time we pitted, I would come out one position less, So I did a lot better in my pit. And I learned last week that when they had the caution-free race, I finished 5th, but I still was way behind because of my pitting. So I worked hard on that this week and got better at it. So I thought I did a better job with that. But I just knew I had to stay with those guys, and I've tried during the course of the year with you and all the rest of them, being a newcomer, of doing the best I can and run clean with all of them. And so I felt like they didn't hang me out to dry like they had, people do earlier when they don't trust you. So I appreciate those guys sticking with me.
Kelly, Jess alluded to the fact that now heading into the playoffs, it's only going to get a little bit more difficult from here on out. And looking at next week, you get this victory, so you've got those bonus points, but a lot of the former winners from this season also finished up inside the top 10 in the point standings, and there is a points payout depending on where you finish inside of the top 10. So you're going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of those bonus points. How does that change the mentality of how you approach the first playoff race next week?
Well, first of all, I'm just happy to be in the daggum thing, but we'll just take it as we can. Like I said, I've been running well, and so just get out there and do my best. I mean, it's you try to pick your times to go and whatnot, and who you're going to run with, and I've got some good guys that I run with that have got me involved in this. Rodney and Ken, Greg, those type guys that run a lot with me, and a couple of those guys weren't here tonight, but just get out there and pick your times to go and whatnot, and maybe some people work with you. And so, yeah, I'm just going to go out there and run like I've been running every week, not try to put a lot of pressure on me.
I have to wonder something because of this win and because it's a special moment. You gonna retire that paint scheme now, or do you think that's your lucky paint scheme now?
No, I'm not going to retire that paint scheme. The paint scheme was done by Rodney Sullins. I'm from Mississippi, and the guy, Jonesy Q Barbecue, is a guy that went to school with me, and that's his company. That's out of Mississippi, and so no, I'm excited about the chance to take that Jones Q Barbecue into the victory lane. Maybe I can do it again.
Well, we know when we come to Talladega, expect the unexpected. you kind of got the feeling that we might end up seeing a first time winner, see somebody win their way into the playoffs, and we go a perfect 10 for 10 here in the regular season with different drivers going to victory lane. Kelly, congratulations once again, big win for you here tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch you as you try and progress your way through the playoffs. But now the floor is yours. We're handing the mic over to you for some victory lane thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank the Jones Q Barbecue, sponsoring Rodney and Ken Robertson, Greg Palmer, and Nate, one of my big racers, and but all the guys and the staff at RTG. Man, this is Chris Elliott brought me over to this group, and it's been unbelievable. I had no idea there was such a great deal going on. I want to thank all the staff at RTG and y'all guys at the Flatcaster. I mean, this is great for you, what y'all do, and a lot of people watch this, and so it's a great deal, and I appreciate everything y'all do.
Well, I think this celebration is going to last quite a while. Kelly Causey is your winner here tonight. The win locks him into the playoffs. We're going to see if he can vie for that championship starting next week in the playoffs here at Talladega. Congratulations once again, Kelly. Go and enjoy this victory, and best of luck next week.
Thank y'all. Look forward to see y'all next week.
Was Kelly Causey, and 11 drivers will advance into the playoffs. The road begins, Jess. Now everybody's going to get their bonus points accumulated. Everybody's going to figure out where they currently stand and try and make plans, if not to win their way into the next round of the playoffs, at least to give themselves a cushion to that cut line.
Absolutely, and there's also the factor of we saw them tonight not get too overbearing like for the majority of the race, though we got really at that end point. But I mean, we saw a lot of single file racing, especially because of the pit stops that broke up a lot of the pack stats. I mean, moving forward, if these guys are running top 5, top 10, I'm interested to see if they're gonna allow like we heard earlier from Chuck. I'm gonna be a little bit more relaxed. I'm just I'm decent. I'm gonna relax a couple of races before I become aggressive. Or the question now is, they may not be aggressive, but how defensive will they be to maintain their spots based on where they're running at it next week? I mean, they might become more defensive rather than aggressive.
Well, here's the thing too, I'm trying to figure out if it's even plausible to have a strategy going into the playoffs because we have to address the elephant in the room, the fact that we're still going to have the randomized qualifying. And we talked with Grant Wesley just a few moments ago, a driver that has gone to victory lane this season. He said the reason he was in the scenario where he might not advance into the playoffs because of where he was in points was because of the way that the random draw put him at the tail end of the field 2 weeks ago, resulting in him getting involved in a wreck and finishing in 20th position. We've seen how pit road the last couple of weeks has played a factor, but I have to wonder in terms of possible poor track position from the get-go, if that might be a deciding factor into some of our favorites here in the playoffs, maybe heading into race 2, race 3, just a little bit behind the 8 ball.
Well, only time's going to tell, because remember, next week, depending on what happens, I might be racing. We got other people who are not even involved in this.
Exactly.
So, I mean, for example, and I'm not saying it will happen. So I'm just pointing that out. I'm just making a hypothetical. For example, say we saw earlier with Brian Lavelle backing off the water rack. All of a sudden, he loses drive. Where's he at now? He's way down there out of like the lead lap. Period. He's no longer in contention. You got people going off the track, coming back on. You got pit road miscues. All it takes is one mistake, and pit road's been the main mistake. But I mean, it's just all these other drivers that aren't even a thought in this playoff or even the championship period, not even the bracket series, obviously. But it's like you got more on your mind to think about than just specifics of advancing.
A lot of people, they think that super speedway racing is just going fast and turning left. A lot more
Yes,
goes
it
into
is.
it. It is, but there's a lot more to it, both physically and mentally. And these drivers here, these 12 drivers that have advanced into the playoffs, they're going to have a lot to worry about when we head back here to the high banks of Talladega next week. The playoffs will begin. And how cool is it? We heard Chuck allude to it. How cool is it? 10 regular season races and 10 different drivers have gone to victory lane. We did not have a multi-time winning driver. I'd have to go back and look through the history books. I'm not certain that's ever happened here in RTG.
I can't even recall it happening because we always have at least, like, we've always had Chuck or Despirito or Seminara Grant, or Jeremy winning multiple times with Noster. Right. So, I mean, or even Metallic. So, to see this happen, I mean, that should tell you where the competition is now.
I'll do a little research and see if I can find out if this might be the first time this has happened. I'll bring that information to the playoffs season opener, if you will, next week. But here tonight, congratulations to the 12 drivers that have advanced into the playoffs. Once again, they are Bob Seminara, Chuck McClure, Brian Schilling, Josh Metallic, Rodney Sullins, Tim Nosker, Joe DeSpirito, Bernie Mobbs, Richard Martin, Grant Wesley, Kelly Causey, and Donnie Garrett. They will begin the road towards the championship next week. We hope you guys will join us for that. Next Thursday night, green flag scheduled to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just the regular season's in the books. We knew coming into tonight there was just that big fight feeling in the air, like something special could happen. It did with Causey getting his first career win. Appreciate you joining me in the booth for this one.
No. It happened in the first 25 laps is where it started at. And from that point on, it became, okay, who's in, who's out, because that's all we were really focused on this whole race, because it was so much change, so much development, and it made it more exciting. I mean, we don't like to see people get knocked out like that, but I mean, you take what you got, and I appreciate being part of it. I mean, I'm sorry Michael couldn't be in it, but I don't know if he'll be next week. I don't know if he'll have me next week up here with you, or me racing next week and all. But we'll find out when that happens. But I mean, I enjoyed it.
Absolutely, a heck of a race to finish out the regular season, and some very high anticipation towards the playoffs beginning next week. We thank you all for tuning into our coverage here tonight. Hope that you enjoyed this race. Once again, congratulations to Kelly Causey on the victory here in the regular season finale for the 56th season of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge. For Jessica Shelton, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday nights. The playoffs begin here in the Tally Challenge series as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope